remember from some of our older videos, Aerodrome was well under $1 billion and basically neck and neck, and sometimes even falling behind the Uniswap TVL on base. And now you can see, like, from when base was like officially launched in August here, the 886 million total TVL, we're up close, brushing with 4 billion in TVL. And obviously, Aerodrome's captured the larger lion's share of that. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Wagmi TV. We're talking about a staple here on the channel, Aerodrome Finance, which has seen a great benefit from this year's bull run. It's pumped really, really hard. And there's been some recent updates to how it's being managed with the Aero Fed. And then we're also going to talk about the chart analysis and where we see that going here in the short to midterm, and then obviously longer into the bull run to see if it's still maybe an opportunity to hop on. So with that, obviously this is not financial advice, but we love talking about the future prospects of Aero, and hope you guys find that interesting. So I'm going to pass this over to Mata to talk through some of the charts and what we're seeing over there.
Yeah, let's pull this thing up for us here. So here's the chart we've been going through a fair amount over the last, really, say a couple months at this point. So we've seen some really awesome price action in Aerodrome. So for those of you that were accumulating kind of below this purple line, congrats to you. I mean, we're doing fairly well. What we did see as we kind of talked through was we have this larger wedge that's denoted in blue here. So as we kind of talk through, it's going to bounce between this, and then eventually it's going to break out in one direction or the other and have a pretty large move. We saw that it did break out in our favor, right, towards the top end. We ran up almost to tag our all-time high, and just before that, Bitcoin tanked, and we kind of saw the entire altcoin market tank along with it, including Aerodrome. So a couple things. Obviously, if you were following this wedge, you did fairly well on that. We talked through the W pattern and the retrace, kind of this WA. So if you bought on that from a technical analysis perspective, fantastic job. As far as what we're looking at here, right? So we do have this trend line. As you can see, we nearly kissed it here, and we might even be able to change this just slightly. Yeah, so maybe it was these two lines that we needed to be, or these two tops that needed to be connected in. We saw that we came right back down into that. So was really nice support for us. But again, not super surprising. We were running up towards all-time highs. We had bearish divergences on our RSI, so it was quite obvious that a pullback was coming at some point, right, for Aerodrome. So then the question becomes, is this something that you start to accumulate? I think hopefully, right, if you were watching us and going through these and digging into Aerodrome, you were accumulating kind of over this couple month span, right, over the summer. I'm not sure if I would ever tell anybody to buy an asset that's up this high at this point. But as far as places that we could be looking, would of course be a retrace to what we call the scene of the crime. So breaking out of this wedge, coming back and finding one of these patterns here and seeing when it touches that, maybe that's a time for us to go back in or reaccumulate or buy some more, etc. If we actually take a look at this larger move, we can see that the 0.5 Fibonacci level is right in that area as well. So another good reason to potentially put a buyout at that point for a decent trade. So honestly, it's been an awesome run. I think the chart looks great. It was due for a little bit of a pullback. But those of you that have been with us for a while, nice job on this. And I think Evan's going to talk through why we can be bullish fundamentally and from a more long-term perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great rundown, and it looks like, if we were to move below some of those levels, we could see a further pullback, but it's showing a great trend right now. And I think something we also wanted to cover was more focused on the tokenomics around Aero. So we'll link back to a previous video we did about the truth about Aerodrome's tokenomics, where we talked through the 3 different phases that Aerodrome has. And so in the second phase, which was, I believe, epoch, until 67, which is the current one we're at, the emissions were decreasing by 1% every epoch or every week. And so this week, epoch 67, we're starting to enter into the third phase of the Aero tokenomics, which is the Aero Fed. And what this is really focused on is giving the Aerodrome protocol back to the Aero holders and letting them decide the future of emissions and the tokenomics of the protocol. So let's dive into it and cover really what to expect. So yeah, since the Aerodrome launch in 2023, we saw the decline of 1% each week. And, you know, zooming in on this graphic here, you can see these very light white bar graphs here, or bar lines here, are the emissions that we've seen over the last 50 weeks. And so you see this 1% decrease in token emissions every single week. But what you can also see is, like we've covered on this channel, the volume and the fees of this protocol are continuing to increase. And what we're starting to see is fees coming close to matching what the token emissions are every week. And so, what we're moving into is a focus on the autopilot phase, where essentially what's going to happen here is the Aero holders get to vote on whether these emissions increase by 0.01% of the total supply or decrease by the 0.01% of the total supply. And so what we could see is over maybe the next year or 2 years, really a drastic decline in how these emissions work. And so that's something I wanted to cover with this graph here. And so if you see the red line, this is actually the current track that we're on, where there's a 1% emissions decrease every week. And then what we're seeing with these bar lines in this bar graph is how, if the Fed or the Aero Fed were to vote to decrease every single week, this is how the emissions would decline. And so if it was, continuing to be voted on that these emissions would be declining, we would see quite a sharp decline compared to the current track that we're on. So very interesting that we might see a switch in the incentives for the Aerodrome protocol away from the emissions and trying to farm the emissions, and rather trying to make sure your Aero is focused on the pools with the highest fees, because that's where you're going to see the best return on your investment. And so, yeah, that's really the big change we're seeing, is that there's going to be a switch from emissions focus to fees focus over the next, year, 2 years. And that's what they've outlined. So we'll include this in the description of the video, and it's a really great article to understand what really the next stage of Aerodrome as a platform.
Yeah, I think this is awesome. That's a great breakdown, Evan. And I think another thing that plays into this transition, to this kind of different model that you're describing, I think another thing just to highlight from a fundamental perspective is the growth in TVL overall of base in general as an ecosystem, but then also how much share of that Aerodrome has gotten. So we've been covering TVL pretty closely ever since we've been talking about Aerodrome. But if you remember from some of our older videos, Aerodrome was well under $1 billion and basically neck and neck, and sometimes even falling behind the Uniswap TVL on base. And now you can see, like, from when base was like officially launched in August here, at 186 total, 186 million total TVL, we're up close, brushing with 4 billion in TVL. And obviously Aerodrome's captured the larger lion's share of that, and it seems like it's kind of running away with it. So in terms of like other chains where there's much closer competition, this seems to be kind of a runaway show in terms of Aerodrome and getting a lot of that TVL. And so what's bullish about this too is that there's really no sign of this slowing down. So as long as Aerodrome can keep it up, they should be getting the largest net inflows of TVL as base grows as an ecosystem. And kind of putting this in perspective, right? Solana's been around since 2018-ish, and looking at where they're at in TVL, right? 9 billion. What base has been able to do inside of a year, just about a year and a few months, and basically come close to half of that already is pretty impressive. So I think long term, as long as base succeeds as a network, Aerodrome's gonna take a lot of that share. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I think that's going to do it for us today. Obviously, always love chatting Aerodrome. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Are you guys still buyers here at this price? Are you guys looking to offload some of your bag? Curious to see what you guys, feel about the overall future, fundamental future of Aerodrome. But again, this is not financial advice. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, share, comment, and subscribe if this was interesting to y'all, and let us know what you guys want to see in the next video. So without further ado, until next week, Wagmi.